Number 4, boys and girls. And at number 4, we have Emanuel Lasker, born in 1868, passes away in 1941. And Lasker keeps the world champion title for 27 years, which is quite some years. Peter, where do we stand on Lasker?
Yeah, I think you point out that he has a longevity as the best player in the world and the world champion. That's just breaks all the charts, right? He wins 5 or 6 world championship matches. He starts by beating Steinitz twice by quite a considerable margin, but then improves on that standard, but actually beating Marshall 8-0, not counting draws. Taras 8-3. And then comes the match with Slektor. That's actually, I think it's only a 10-game match, and it ends with 1 win each. But Lasker wins the last game, and it's somewhat unclear if Lasker needed to, or if Slektor needed to win it in order for the match rules dictating that he had to win by 2. So the Slektor match is actually a weak spot in a very dominating row, which is ended by beating Janovsky, also with 8 wins against 0. So for a very long span, he just crushes world championship matches, with Slektor being the exception. But it's just much, much better when you look at it. And also, if you look at the world rankings by Sonas, he has a whopping 24 years and 4 months as the world number 1, which is, I think no one gets close to. Yeah. So that's, by these standards, he's just breaking all kind of charts. And he's the last guy setting the golden standard, you can say.
Yeah, that's the usual question, how much we discount for these being early times. Clearly, he's not playing chess or not being active in chess all of the times. And there's also, I'm not sure, speculation or record that he kind of avoids Capablanca throughout the 1910s, also Rubinstein. I don't know enough as usual. It was a different time where I think the challenger also had to raise the money in order to challenge the champion, which was always tricky. And there were all kinds of negotiations about terms with Capablanca and so on and so forth. So, but overall, there's politics involved with so many of these guys. And even if we say for 10 of these years, maybe he wasn't the strongest in the world or not the obviously strongest, his record is still very impressive.
He has some, even if we discount 10 years, which is probably too much, right? Then there is still 14 years left. And I think also, some of these years he was probably inactive. Actually, he has recently some very interesting books has been made about Lasker, and it explains also that he was an elite bridge player and actually used to play bridge at some point in order to feed himself, because chess wasn't as lucrative at the time. He also was a Go player, which was sort of a bit of a pioneer in Europe, but considerably weak there. But in bridge, he was close to world elite, and he wrote numerous books, and was also actually involved in game theory before there was this huge breakthrough some years later and such. So he was, incredibly gifted and very intellectually interested in a way. But
I know Go and bridge and so on are all pluses in your book, but I'm not sure we can count them for these rankings. Still,
not exactly. I'm just actually pointing to that he took some kind of break, and that these 4 years, 4 months as the world best player, he might have been inactive some of it, but it's just such a long period that he was still, even if you discount a bit, he's still one of the best. And I agree with you that his time is probably just before we start to see a lot of competition. But still, it is, quite stronger than if you go 100 years back, in a sense, right? There was actually a lot of activity happening, and he has to, Marshall, Taras, Steinitz, it's kind of serious names, right? He has to play them.
Yeah, my argument is mainly that, I'm sure I've called 10 other guys the first modern player throughout this series, but to me, Lasker, I think he's getting a bit shortchanged there by history, that he has this reputation as a psychological player and so on. I think he's just a proper all-around incredibly good player.
Yeah. I think it's partly also because the two of us, we look a bit down maybe on the psychological aspect in a way, right?
I think it's just not a fair representation. No, he's smart about doing stuff.
He's just very strong.
Yeah.
But he cares a lot about psychology, and he writes about it. And now I read, I'll return to the game of bridge again, but he has a chapter where he sort of debates psychology and bridge. So it's obvious he's thinking a lot in these things. But I mean, he's also just a very strong player.
He also, I'm not sure, maybe the word psychology is what bothers me. It's clear that he understands game theory and EV and so on, and that it might influence his choices. Yeah. But mainly, chess is a game of complete information. He's just very, very good at that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he just takes risk. He's trying to beat the opponent, and well, he's not so theoretically minded. He actually thinks that he can play long games and outplay his players. I remember at some point I was talking with Anand when I was his second, and I said sort of the difference between chess and poker is that in poker you play your opponent, while in chess you play your position. He said, well, of course you play your opponent. You play the person as well. So I think it's just a matter of perspective, and Lasker was very much understanding what his opponent could do and could not do, and tried to exploit that in order to win a game of chess. But I agree with you. He's a shockingly strong player, and I have heavily underestimated him. I've had to.
Yeah, that's the narrative I grew up with didn't add up when I started looking at his games. I thought, this guy is insanely good. And it was a bit of a surprise because you would think, oh, he makes some weird moves trying to unbalance whoever, Tarash something, but no, he's just, just very, very strong. And yeah, Kramnik called him, I don't know, the first all-round player or something. And I agree with it.
We sort of, also his career is so long that we have decided only to sum up his world championship wins, because he plays so much, obviously he wins everything at some point and so on, right? So, well, let's have a look at a game of his chess, right?
No, of course, we should briefly bring up the question, where do you rank him? Like by longevity, you could make the number one case. I think it's fair to discount a little bit because of the times and the level of activity and maybe not always playing the strongest challenger. But he is a giant, and I think you can justify having him ahead of Alyechin and Karpov, who are obviously also giants, but it's lofty territory, but I think he's one of the great.
Maybe he was not more dominant towards his peers than Alyechin, but he was it for a longer time, right? And in that sense, and well, as Karpov, we debated, Karpov lost to someone. Of course, Lasker also loses to Capablanca, but
that's in his 50s.
It's very late in his career, and I think he needs money, these kind of things, right? So,
because you could argue he also only beats Steinitz when Steinitz is quite old, but
but I would more see these things as outliers. That it's sort of all the people between Steinitz and Capablanca he basically controls, and is just clearly the strongest player, which is for a considerable amount of time. But I agree with you. If you looked at pure numbers, we would have him higher, but we think they have bigger competition. They have a greater dominance in some way. Those the three will have ahead of him. Right? So.
Anyway, let's check one of Mr. Lasker's games. It's not from a World Championship match. It's not such a sporting relevant moment, but it goes to show, I think, what a strong and in some ways modern player he was. This is in 1904. Lasker is white against William Napier. Gold Dragon, H3, G4, maybe not the most topical line, but we've seen all kinds of H3, G4s in.
Yeah. Altman would start doing this with reverse college much, much later and such, right? It's
castles, G5, knight to E8. I'm not sure if you could make a case for knight H5. Can't claim I'm an expert on this, but G4, G5, H4, obviously a theme we're used to. In all kinds of situations, knight C7, maybe a bit slow, preparing D5, F4, E5, knight E2, D5. Which also looks modern by Napier in a way. No, you're being attacked on the flank, you counter in the center, or maybe.
I was about to say that before D5, well, it just looks like, it could be a normal game where the world champion trashes a weaker player. But the next phase becomes completely modern in the sense that now chaos just reigns, and Lasker, well, he operates in chaos extremely well.
Yeah. ED knight D4, this was the point. It's actually a very serious counter. Knight takes D4, knight takes D5. And if takes, pawn takes D4, bishop D4, queen D5, there is all kinds of stuff hanging. So Napier makes it a mess, but Lasker shows his skill basically with the next sequence. He goes knight to f5, which is nice, covering this. It's not the end of the story. Knight c3, takes. Knight e7 check. King h8.
King f8, bishop c5, right?
King f8 doesn't work because of this. But after king h8, the situation is still unclear. If you take on c3, I think e takes f4. Then this is under attack.
And rook e8, right?
Rook e8 is there. So it's still very much a mess. And I really enjoyed the next move because it feels so modern. I'm not even sure. I don't even know if it is the best move, but I think it was also a strong move. He goes h5. Who needs all these pieces? Let's threaten h6 or hg. Napier goes rook to e8. And he goes bishop to c5. Defending this, which, yeah, it's all very complex move-by-move stuff. It's not, let's beat this Patzer with my greater understanding. He's just...
No, but it looks like any modern calculator. You could mention Morozevich 10 years ago, but nowadays you can mention most because we are used to operating in this kind of chaos because we have computers, right? But
yeah, but if you told me this was, I don't know, Nepomniachtchi or Caruana on the white side, I wouldn't be overly surprised.
Not at all, no. And also, well, it sort of hangs by a thread, right? There's no heavy logic involved. It's just pure, what do you call calculation or pure...
yeah. Also, we should mention we have no clue what's going on, but that also speaks about how good Lasker was in 1904, no? Because he does.
Yeah.
GH, bishop c4, developing more pieces, still ignoring this bait. EF, bishop f7, the mayhem continues. Knight to e4. The situation is still not clarified. But Lasker shows greater vision in this complete chaos. Actually, Napier, shout out to Napier, I'm not sure if he was a top player for the time, but he also doesn't make it easy on Lasker, no? In this total mess, like, it's currently a rook down, but...
To be fair, I only know this game by Napier, but it could have ended embarrassingly, but on the other hand, they keep going, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty good loss, that's the thing. And here, white is a rook up, but Lasker understands, I think once again correctly, he has to return it to stabilize. And it turns out that now, once the situation clarifies, he's better because of his better place.
Yeah, it's materially equal, but white is dominating, right? So
no, it's just good stuff. And once again, material remains almost equal, but Lasker takes complete control and wins this game. It does deserve deeper analysis than we're doing here in this format, so by all means, look it up. It's been well chronicled.
Oh, but Lasker is it's a pleasant surprise to look at his games, right? Well, many are when you dig into it. Lasker, also we're debating if he should be higher than fourth. I think for many it's a surprise that he is number 4, but I think that we have very little doubt about that he actually deserves.
No, as usual, it's many factors to juggle, but yeah, I think he was tremendously good for his times.
Very much so.
Thanks for watching this video.